Hey, good morning, class. Can't believe that it's already week 4 of teaching techniques, so let's just jump right into the course overview for the weekly module for course 4, and let's start working through it. Okay, so just to kind of give you a brief overview here on course 4, what we're looking at for assignments and material this week is to first look and learn a little bit more about critical thinking and what that is. And then we're going to be looking at a case study assignment, which I'll explain to you guys in just a minute, and then also effective questioning, which will be our topic for the discussion board. So let's just jump into the first little module here, which is critical thinking. Of course, we probably heard a lot about critical thinking as we were going through the clinical portion of our respiratory therapy degrees in our associate programs. And a lot of times when we're teaching critical thinking to associate degree students, we do it in a form of providing the recall information to the students so that they can understand what it is that they're actually learning. So they kind of have to memorize a bunch of facts. So all of the policy and procedure and techniques for doing a certain type of therapy, what are the contraindications, the indications, the hazards, the adverse effects, along with what are your blood gas values, what are your lab values, your x-rays, all of those types of things. Being able to see the findings from each of those assessments, and then using critical thinking skills to be able to analyze all of that information together into an application type of environment. So you're using that critical thinking skill in order to not just recall a fact or to know an answer, but to use that information that you know in order to actually put it together into synthesis, into actually develop a plan of care for your patient. And so that's where most of our critical thinking understanding comes from an associate degree level. So we're going to kind of just expand upon that a little bit and look at how we're going to use that in how do we teach it. Obviously we can, and then how do we use it in order to evaluate teaching. So as we look at it a little bit deeper, you can see here we're gonna look at how it's actually developed. Did we always have it, or did it just need to sort of be brought out of us, or did we actually have to gain it while we were going through our formal education? And as mentioned, we kind of discussed already how we kind of teach it in the associate degree programs in respiratory therapy, and truthfully in other allied health programs as well. So a couple of questions listed here for you to consider while you're reading through some of the attachments that are listed up here, this Critical Thinking 1 and 2 PDF. Keep those things in mind, because we'll be then applying those later in the assignment for this week, and you'll probably even use them in your discussion board as well. So then that brings us down to the assignment, and that's the planning a PowerPoint style case study. So if we kind of look at the progression of the class so far, we started off in week 1 where we actually put together some learning outcomes and learned how to write good learning outcomes. We applied those to week 2 and kind of brought it full in to do a lesson plan for our scheduled course that we were teaching. This week, we're kind of going that next step in that we're going to be taking basically that lesson plan, and we're going to figure out how do we make that into our PowerPoint, or how does a PowerPoint get drawn out of that lesson plan. And so one thing I want to stress here right up front is you are not actually going to make a PowerPoint this week. So do not turn in a PowerPoint of your lesson plan this week. That's not what we're doing. But what we are doing is we're going to develop an outline for the PowerPoint. And so it kind of is just going that one step further, one more layer into preparing our teaching, which is such a vital aspect of teaching and assessment, as you guys learned last week, is that we need to be thinking in mind when we prepare our material, what is the outcome, what is the assessment, and then how are we going to evaluate that and come back full circle and then make those changes. So when you do this assignment this week, remember, you are making an outline, and you should turn that in via Google Doc, just like the rest of your paper-style assignments. But I've got to stress that it's an outline that then you would build your case study from. Now, we're not building the PowerPoint, but the assignment is a case study. So the whole idea of this is that we're going to sort of be building on critical thinking through a case study. So we're going to be providing through a PowerPoint to our students the information that they are going to need to synthesize in order to then come up with the corrective action, the plan of care, or the diagnosis for your patient. So in an overview type of way, this PowerPoint style case study that you're preparing for is bringing in that teaching of critical thinking, and it also then is going to allow you to assess the student's level of critical thinking as well. So from an overview perspective, think about it like this. Okay, so you've already got good outcomes for your course. You've got a lesson plan. You know how to devise that for any particular lesson. But now this week, let's say your lesson is this case study in which you hope to do some critical thinking building skills with. And so you're going to prepare an outline of what your PowerPoint is going to look like. And I can speak from experience. This is something I do on a regular basis in teaching my face-to-face students in the associate degree programs. Very, very common for me to go to my textbook, read through the chapter that we're studying, and I'll highlight all kinds of information in there. And then I'll go through it a second time, and I'll start typing on my computer of the highlighted information, the material that is vital for me to give to the students. And so I'll type all of that highlighted information out that I'm going to then hopefully teach the students in my own words onto an outline. And I'll use chapter headings, I'll use subtopics, and then even subtopic details from there, and then I'll jump out to a new heading and then all the way over to another major heading. So I'm building an outline in a document. After that, I then go ahead and start building my PowerPoint based off of that outline that I've already created. So if you think about it, I've already gone, as the instructor, I've gone through that material once as a student, obviously many, many times as a student, but we're pretty far removed from that in a lot of cases once we become full-time educators. So I've gone through it once, I've read through the chapter completely, then I've highlighted it, then I've typed it all out into my outline, and then I've put it down into a PowerPoint. So by the time I actually teach that PowerPoint to my students, I've probably gone through it at a minimum of 3 times just in preparation, and probably 1 or 2 more times after that just in review of the course that I'm going to be teaching face-to-face. So there's a lot of review that goes into that just in the process of preparing it. I say all that in order to make the point that becoming a content expert as a teacher is kind of natural once you become a teacher, because in order to prepare, if you're preparing properly like we're showing you in this course, you naturally will prepare yourself academically to be confident and to have full knowledge going into that course so that those questions that the student asks you are not going to be catching you off guard. Now, of course, sometimes they do ask a question and you're like, that's a great question, I'm not really sure, let's find out. But that's pretty rare. And the other aspect of it is that takes away so much of the nervousness or the nervous energy of being in front of people and actually teaching them, thinking that, oh, you know, I don't know enough to teach, or I'm not skilled enough, I don't have enough experience. What if they ask me these questions? What am I going to do? And really, that confidence from having reviewed that material, it puts you in that position where maybe you've got a bunch of notes in your PowerPoint, like in the little notes section, and you're like, okay, I'm going to use these notes, or maybe you've got note cards or even a piece of paper. Really, by the time you get to that point and now you're teaching it in face-to-face with those students, you realize, I don't need those notes at all. All I need is the bullet point prompts in my PowerPoint, and I'm able to teach that information just from my mind because I know it that well at this point. So just kind of a tip there. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of comfort in preparing to teach for some of you that have that aspiration. Okay, so let's get back to this case study. So what I want you to do then is put an outline, design an outline show me what you're going to be teaching, show me the outline that you would use in order to build the PowerPoint. But again, do not build that PowerPoint. And the outline should be focused on building a case study type of PowerPoint. Now, I've included a bunch of different attachments here about what that should look like. I've given you several different examples of what the outline is supposed to look like, as well as some information on what does a clinical case study look like in a PowerPoint type of presentation. So you've got all the material you'll need in order to build this, to have background information about the case study that you're actually going to be building. Now, you probably have seen a physician or even another therapist at a state conference do this type of thing, where they're presenting a special case, and so they walk you through, okay, here's the patient, here's the background and the history surrounding their length of stay. Here's on admit, we found all of these items, and then should we do this? And they give you some options, and everyone in the audience raises their hands or shouts out an option, and then they say, okay, this is what we actually did, this is what we should have done, and so forth. And then they move on to the next step. It's almost like the clinical simulations when you took your boards. In any case, that's kind of the idea of what we're looking at here. But remember, the underlying theme of all of this is to implement critical thinking learning through this. So we want to be teaching critical thinking skills to our students in the form of this case study. Okay, there's lots of information here in this module here. So the guidelines are all listed, lots of information. If you have any questions, please let me know, ask me in advance, go to the study hall and let me know what you're thinking. And you'll see here information on how I'm going to grade the case study and where the points are going to be. Okay, so enough about the case study. Let's move on. Okay, so this last module for the week is a discussion board post on effective questioning. And so lots of information here about effective questioning. The goal here is that you are going to use another person. You're going to actually go out and find someone else to ask effective questions to. And so how are you going to learn about effective questioning? Well, just keep scrolling down, and there's several PDFs attached here for what is good effective questioning, what are the 5 principles of it, and how do we use that as a teaching strategy. And then we've got a couple videos here for what is good effective questioning and what is not so good effective questioning. And so you'll clearly be able to see the difference between the two. There's a pretty big disparity between the two of them. So do watch those videos. Make sure you're reading those PDFs before you jump into making a discussion board post. But then look at what's required of the discussion board post. So this isn't necessarily like a group activity, but you are going to have to reach out to somebody else in order to ask them some open-ended questions and then bring all of that together and present it into your discussion board. All right, guys, I know we kind of went long this week with the course overview, but I really wanted to make sure you understood the specifics and the importance of the outline of the PowerPoint case study assignment, and then also just share you a little bit about my experience in developing classes and developing content to teach in a face-to-face type of way. Online's pretty similar. You do have a lot of content review that goes into building your content for teaching online, but since I know that all of you guys obviously came from the associate degree program realm, and I have a teaching position in an associate degree program, I wanted to kind of make that connection with you and let you share that. Most of our programs in respiratory care at this moment are associate degree. There is a trend, and that's changing towards BS entry, and I do actually think that we're going to be furthering along into that trend very rapidly in the near future. But for the time being, if you were to graduate the program here and then jump into a academic setting to start teaching, that's going to be very relatable to you and very applicable to that experience. So I wanted to be able to share that with you as well. All right, guys, I Awesome work so far in the course. Your guys' tests from last week and 3 were really fantastic. I was blown away by how well you guys were able to bring in all of that material. Everybody did really well, so kudos to you guys. I will see you guys in week 5. It's hard to believe that we're getting so close to that already. If you've not looked at the final 2 weeks, 6 and 7, for the final project information, look at them today and then start thinking about what you're going to do, and then even start working towards presenting and building outlines in order to finish those assignments. Start working on them now so you're not overwhelmed later. All right, I'll see you in week 5. Everybody have a blessed week.